I thanked my director for the small bonus that had appeared in my account that morning. He closed the glass door of his office, sat across from me, and said quietly, "Emma, that bonus was supposed to be $90,000. For a second I honestly thought he was joking. The late afternoon sun reflected against the windows of the 23rd floor, painting orange stripes across the conference table, but suddenly everything around me felt cold. Too bright. Too silent. What? My laugh sounded nervous, unnatural even to me. The bonus was $2,000, I said. I got the notification this morning. Daniel Harper, regional director at Nexacore Systems, slowly turned his monitor toward me. On the screen was a payroll summary with my employee profile at the top. Emma Collins, Senior Infrastructure Architect. Performance bonus. Q1 2025. Approved amount, $90,000. Below that were tax deductions and a final deposit amount of just over $58,000. I stared at the numbers without understanding them. Then I opened my banking app with shaking fingers. The direct deposit from Nexacore Payroll was there. $1,346.22. That was all I had received. Daniel watched my face carefully. He didn't look angry. He looked horrified. "That's impossible," I whispered. "There has to be some mistake." "That's exactly what I thought," he replied. Until I checked the payroll logs. I worked for Nexacore Systems in Chicago, a mid-sized cybersecurity consulting company that handled infrastructure for hospitals, logistics corporations, and financial firms. I'd been there for almost 6 years. Long enough to build a reputation. Long enough for people to trust me with impossible projects. The bonus was tied to the North River Recovery Project. 3 months earlier, North River Health servers had been hit by ransomware during a snowstorm that shut down half the city. Their backups failed. Their emergency systems collapsed. Their entire network was hours away from complete disaster. I practically lived in the office for 12 straight weeks. I slept on couches. I missed birthdays. I ate vending machine dinners at 3 in the morning, while rebuilding corrupted systems node by node. When we finally restored the network and prevented patient records from being permanently lost, North River signed a multi-year contract extension worth millions to Nexacore. Everyone congratulated me. Daniel told me personally that leadership intended to take care of me. So when $2,000 appeared in my account that Friday morning, I thought maybe corporate appreciation just sounded bigger in meetings than in reality. I had actually been grateful. I texted my best friend Chloe that maybe I could finally replace my dying laptop or book a weekend trip somewhere warm. Now I sat frozen in Daniel's office, realizing someone had stolen almost everything before it reached me. Daniel clicked through several windows on the payroll system. "There's more," he said carefully. My stomach dropped. He opened historical compensation records. "Your salary adjustment from last year never fully reached your account either." I frowned. "What do you mean?" "Your approved salary has been $112,000 since January 2024. He pointed to the records. "But your deposits reflect payments closer to 92. The room tilted slightly. I pulled up old pay stubs. I had never truly analyzed them before. I checked balances, paid bills, moved on with life. Like most people. Now I compared the numbers against the official records Daniel showed me. He was right. Every paycheck for over a year had been short. Not enough to trigger immediate panic. Not enough to feel dramatic. Just enough to keep me constantly stressed financially despite supposedly earning a 6-figure salary. My chest tightened. I remembered all the moments I blamed myself. The nights I cried because rent felt overwhelming. The guilt every time I bought something unnecessary. The embarrassment when Chloe casually asked why I still drove an old Honda with a broken heater despite my promotion. I thought I was terrible with money. In reality, someone had been stealing from me for over a year. Daniel leaned back in his chair, jaw tight. "We estimate the total missing amount is around $137,000. I couldn't breathe for a second. That number didn't even feel real. $137,000. Enough for a down payment on a condo. Enough to erase my student loans. Enough to completely change my life. Who has access to payroll?" I asked quietly. Daniel hesitated. "Officially? 3 people. Me, payroll management, and HR administration." The silence after that sentence felt dangerous. He picked up his office phone. Rachel, can you come to my office immediately? Bring all payroll adjustment records for Emma Collins from January 2024 to present. Rachel Bennett was Nexicor's HR manager. Mid-30s. Organized. Calm. The type of woman who color-coded spreadsheets and remembered everyone's birthday. I'd always liked her. Now my mind immediately turned suspicious. And I hated that. 20 minutes later, the office conference room became something out of a crime documentary. Rachel arrived carrying folders in her laptop. Shortly after, the company CFO, Leonard Hayes, joined us remotely through video conference from New York. Then payroll supervisor Kevin Doyle appeared looking pale and confused. Documents covered the table. Numbers. Transaction logs. Approval timestamps. The deeper we looked, the worse it became. My quarterly bonuses had been altered repeatedly. Large approved payments somehow converted into tiny deposits before reaching my account. Leonard zoomed in on a transaction history and frowned. There's a secondary distribution account attached to Emma's employee profile. What? I said immediately. Rachel turned her screen toward us. There it was. Primary direct deposit Chase Bank. Secondary compensation override. Crest National Credit Union. I stared at the second account number. I've never seen that before. Rachel's face lost color. The override was added in February last year. By who? Daniel asked. Rachel clicked through audit logs. Then she froze. Her voice became barely audible. It says the modification came from my credentials. Nobody spoke. I looked at her. Rachel looked genuinely terrified. I didn't do this, she whispered immediately. I swear to God. Leonard's expression hardened. Then someone used your access. Rachel shook her head rapidly. No one has my password. Daniel folded his arms. Can someone bypass your workstation? No. Can someone access your laptop remotely? Maybe if they had physical access. The atmosphere changed instantly. Everyone in the room understood this wasn't random. This was planned. Careful. Technical. Someone knew exactly how payroll infrastructure worked. Someone had intentionally designed the theft to stay invisible. Leonard requested a full forensic audit before the meeting even ended. By 6:30 that evening, an external fraud investigator had already been contracted. By 7, Daniel told me I needed to file a police report. And by 8:30, I was sitting alone in my apartment staring at my banking app like it belonged to someone else. The city lights outside blurred through rain on the windows. I kept replaying everything in my head. Every overtime shift. Every sacrifice. Every moment I worried about money while someone else quietly lived off mine. I called Chloe because I couldn't stand the silence anymore. She answered immediately. You sound weird, she said before I even spoke properly. What happened? So I told her. All of it. The bonus. The missing salary. The fake account. The possibility that someone inside my company had stolen over $100,000 from me. When I finished, she stayed quiet for several seconds. Then she said something unexpected. Emma, I always thought something didn't make sense. What do you mean? You work harder than anyone I know. You got promoted twice. But you were always anxious about money. I figured maybe Chicago was just draining you financially, but honestly, you never lived like someone earning 6 figures. Her words hit harder than I expected. Because she was right. I remembered declining vacations, skipping dentist appointments, calculating grocery totals down to the dollar. Meanwhile, somewhere out there, another person had been spending my money while I apologized to myself for not working hard enough. That night I barely slept. At 2 in the morning I opened every pay stub from the last 2 years. At 4 I made spreadsheets. At 5:30 I realized the theft pattern aligned perfectly with every raise and bonus approval. Someone wasn't randomly skimming payments. They were monitoring my career, watching every success, and taking a percentage of it. By Saturday morning I was sitting inside the Financial Crimes Division downtown, giving my official statement to Detective Lisa Moreno. She listened carefully while writing notes in a leather notebook. When I finished, she leaned back slightly. This person got comfortable, she said. That's usually why they get caught. You think they'll find whoever did it? Oh, absolutely. Her eyes sharpened. Money always leaves footprints. I wanted to believe her. But as I walked back through the gray Chicago rain afterward, I couldn't shake one terrifying thought. If Daniel hadn't noticed the $90,000 discrepancy, how much longer would this have continued? The forensic investigator arrived Monday morning exactly at 8:30. Her name was Olivia Reed. Early 40s. Sharp navy suit. Calm voice. The kind of woman who looked like she noticed details other people missed automatically. She transformed one of Nexacor's conference rooms into a temporary investigation center within minutes. 3 laptops. Portable monitors. Stacks of printed transaction records. A locked silver case nobody touched except her. Daniel introduced us briefly. Olivia specializes in corporate fraud and cyber financial crimes, he said. If there's a trail, she'll find it. Olivia shook my hand firmly. I reviewed the preliminary data over the weekend, she said. Whoever did this understands payroll architecture extremely well. That sentence stayed in my head all day, because it confirmed something I already feared. This wasn't random theft. It wasn't desperation. It was expertise. Over the next 3 days, Olivia interviewed everyone with payroll access individually. Rachel from HR. Kevin from payroll. IT administrators. Finance coordinators. Even Daniel. Meanwhile, I tried to continue working. I opened tickets. Answered emails. Attended meetings. But I couldn't focus on anything. Every person in the office suddenly looked suspicious. Every casual smile felt fake. Every whispered conversation made my stomach tighten. At night I kept imagining someone watching my salary approvals like a hunter watching prey. Wednesday afternoon, Daniel called me into conference room B. When I walked in, everyone was already there. Daniel, Rachel, Kevin, Leonard on video call again, the company attorney, and Olivia sitting quietly at the head of the table with several folders open in front of her. The atmosphere felt heavy enough to suffocate in. Olivia looked at me first. We traced the secondary account. Nobody moved. She opened a document. The account receiving the diverted compensation was opened 14 months ago at Crest National Credit Union under the name Laura Mitchell. I frowned immediately. That's fake. Yes, Olivia said. The identity documents were fraudulent. The social security number belongs to a deceased woman from Michigan. Rachel covered her mouth. Olivia continued. However, despite the fake identity, the account activity gives us useful information. She connected her laptop to the conference room screen. Bank statements appeared. Rows of deposits. My bonuses. My salary deductions. Every stolen payment. I felt physically sick watching them scroll across the screen, like someone had turned my life into accounting data. Olivia clicked again. We subpoenaed the IP logs used to create and access the account. The screen changed. One address appeared repeatedly. A residential internet connection in Evanston, Illinois. Then Olivia said the words that changed the entire room. The IP address belongs to Rachel Bennett's home. Rachel's chair scraped backward violently. No. Her face went completely white. No, that's impossible. Daniel stared at her. Rachel looked genuinely panicked now. I didn't do this, she said immediately. I swear I didn't. Olivia stayed calm. The evidence suggests someone used your credentials, your network, and potentially your hardware. Rachel's breathing became uneven. I never stole anything from Emma. Olivia clicked through more records. The override modification on Emma Collins' payroll profile occurred February 18, 2024 at 11:42 p.m. It was executed through your employee login from your home network. Rachel looked like she might faint. Leonard spoke through the monitor. Did anyone else have access to your laptop? Rachel hesitated. That hesitation changed everything. Olivia noticed instantly. Rachel. She swallowed hard. My husband sometimes used it. The room went silent. Daniel folded his arms slowly. For what? He works in software development, she said weakly. Sometimes if his personal computer had issues, he borrowed mine. Olivia wrote something down. What's your husband's name? Tyler Bennett. What does he do exactly? He was a back-end engineer at Vertex Dynamics. Was. Rachel froze. Then her eyes widened slightly. A realization. Terrible one. Olivia noticed immediately. Mrs. Bennett? Rachel's voice became smaller. He lost his job last year. Nobody spoke. I thought he found freelance work afterward, she continued quietly. He still left the apartment every morning. He acted normal. Daniel exchanged a glance with Olivia. Olivia typed something quickly into her laptop. What month was he laid off? January 2024. Exactly 1 month before the fraudulent payroll override was created. My skin went cold. Olivia turned the monitor slightly. We already checked employment records this morning. Tyler Bennett has had no registered employment income since January last year. Rachel stared at the table. I didn't know. Her voice cracked on the last word. Olivia opened another file. We also reviewed surveillance footage connected to ATM withdrawals from the fraudulent account. She played the first clip. A man wearing a baseball cap withdrew cash from an ATM at a gas station. Face partially hidden. Tall. Broad shoulders. Definitely male. Olivia paused the footage. Approximately 6'1", she said. Rachel is 5'4". Rachel looked frozen. Another video played. Another withdrawal. Another location. Same man. Then a third clip. This time the man removed his cap while entering a dark SUV. The image sharpened. Rachel made a sound somewhere between a gasp and a sob. Tyler. I had met him twice before. Quiet. Polite. Forgettable in the way many husbands at corporate holiday parties were forgettable. And somehow he had stolen over $100,000 from me, while eating dinner beside his wife every night. Daniel's expression darkened. Jesus Christ. Rachel started crying silently. I didn't know, she repeated again and again. I swear I didn't know. Olivia nodded carefully. We believe you. Then she explained the full picture. Tyler had used Rachel's credentials to access the payroll system remotely from their apartment. He created the fake secondary account under a dead woman's identity. He routed portions of my compensation there slowly enough to avoid detection. The theft increased over time because confidence increased over time. At first he diverted small amounts, then larger bonuses, then portions of my salary, and when nobody noticed, he became reckless. The $90,000 bonus exposed everything because the discrepancy was finally too large to hide. Olivia turned toward Rachel. We also found transfers from the fake account into another checking account under your name. Rachel looked horrified. I don't have another account. You do now, Olivia said quietly. Tyler opened one using your information. The room became completely silent again. Olivia explained that Tyler had carefully built layers between himself and the stolen money. Fake identities, secondary transfers, cash withdrawals, and most importantly, everything pointed toward Rachel if discovered. He had prepared for the possibility of getting caught. And if that happened, his own wife would have looked guilty. I watched Rachel completely break apart in front of us. Not dramatically, not loudly. It was worse than that. Like watching someone realize their entire marriage had been fake in real time. Olivia finally asked the question everyone was thinking. Does Tyler know the investigation started? Rachel shook her head weakly. No. Olivia looked toward Daniel. I recommend contacting law enforcement immediately before he runs. Rachel grabbed her phone with trembling hands. I need to call him. Olivia nodded once. The entire room stayed silent while she dialed. Speakerphone. 3 rings. Then Tyler answered casually. Hey babe. Hearing his normal voice after everything we had just learned made my stomach twist. Rachel could barely speak. Where are you? At work, he replied instantly. Olivia raised an eyebrow. Rachel stared straight ahead. What office? A pause. Why? Because I'm sitting in a conference room with investigators, lawyers, and detectives who have bank records connecting you to stolen payroll funds. Silence. Long silence. Then Tyler exhaled slowly. And his voice changed completely. Cold. Tired. Almost relieved. I was wondering how long it would take. Rachel burst into tears. You stole from my company? I borrowed money, he snapped back. From a corporation making millions. You stole from Emma. She never even noticed. That sentence hit me harder than I expected. Not because it was true, but because of how casually he said it. Like my life had simply been convenient to exploit. Rachel shook violently. You framed me. Another silence. Then Tyler spoke quietly. I wasn't going to let it get that far. You already did. He didn't answer. Olivia motioned for everyone to stay quiet while she texted someone rapidly. Tyler finally sighed. I just needed time, he muttered. After I lost my job, everything collapsed. Bills, debt, mortgage. I thought I could replace the money before anyone figured it out. You stole $137,000, Daniel said coldly. Tyler laughed bitterly. Nexicor spends more than that on executive retreats. Olivia finally spoke for the first time during the call. Tyler Bennett. This is Olivia Reed working alongside the Chicago Financial Crimes Task Force. Officers are currently on their way to your residence. Do not leave the property. The line disconnected instantly. Rachel stared at her phone like it no longer made sense. Nobody knew what to say. 45 minutes later, Tyler Bennett was arrested outside the apartment building he shared with Rachel. He didn't resist. According to the police report, he actually looked exhausted. Like he'd been waiting for this moment for months. The investigation moved unbelievably fast after that. Federal authorities became involved because the fraud crossed banking systems and state financial networks. Tyler's apartment was searched, computers seized, encrypted drives recovered, and the evidence they found was overwhelming. Spreadsheets tracking every stolen payment, research on payroll vulnerabilities, fake identification templates, detailed notes about my compensation history, even projected future theft estimates based on expected promotions. He had literally calculated my future value to him. That realization made me feel sick in a way I still can't fully describe. Not angry, not even scared, just violated. Like parts of my life I thought belonged only to me had secretly become someone else's financial strategy. 3 weeks later, Assistant U.S. Attorney Natalie Pierce explained the case to me personally. Tyler was facing multiple federal charges: wire fraud, identity theft, financial cybercrime, unauthorized system access, corporate fraud, potential prison sentence. Over 20 years. But Natalie warned me about something else too. These cases sound satisfying from the outside, she said. But emotionally they rarely feel finished even after conviction. At the time I didn't fully understand what she meant. I would later. Tyler accepted a plea agreement 2 months later. There was never going to be a trial. The evidence against him was overwhelming. Federal investigators recovered almost everything from his devices: transaction records, fake account credentials, banking history, encrypted spreadsheets, even personal notes where he tracked exactly how much money he believed he could continue stealing from me before someone noticed. The part that haunted me most wasn't the theft itself. It was one sentence investigators found inside a document on his laptop. Emma won't notice. People like her never do. I read that line 3 times during my meeting with Assistant U.S. Attorney Natalie Pierce. Then I closed the folder because my hands started shaking. People like her. What exactly did that mean? Successful women? Overworked employees? People who trusted systems too much? Or maybe just people Tyler considered easy to exploit. I stopped trying to understand him after that. Rachel disappeared from the office during the investigation. Officially, she was on paid administrative leave until authorities confirmed she had no involvement. Unofficially, everyone knew she was shattered. The gossip inside Nexicor spread fast despite leadership trying to contain it. People whispered in elevators. Conversations stopped when I entered break rooms. I caught coworkers looking at me with pity constantly. I hated it. I hated being the woman who got robbed. One evening Chloe came over with wine and takeout because she claimed I looked emotionally dead during our last phone call. She wasn't wrong. We sat on my apartment floor surrounded by unopened mail while rain hit the windows. You know what scares me? I admitted quietly. What? I still don't understand how I never noticed. Chloe sighed. Emma, you were exhausted all the time. That's not an excuse. Yes, it is. I looked at her. You trusted your employer. You trusted Payroll. You trusted numbers on a screen because normal people don't expect to be secretly robbed by some stranger using HR software. I laughed weakly. When you say it out loud, it sounds insane. Because it is insane. But even after she left that night, guilt still sat inside me heavily. I replayed every financial struggle from the last year differently now. The credit card balances. The anxiety. The nights I skipped dinners out because I thought I couldn't afford them. The constant fear that I somehow wasn't successful enough despite working harder than everyone around me. Tyler stole money. But he also stole peace. Confidence. Security. And those things were harder to calculate. A week before sentencing, Natalie asked whether I wanted to submit a victim impact statement. First I said no immediately. I didn't want to see Tyler again. I didn't want to stand in court describing my life to strangers. But later that night I changed my mind, because staying silent suddenly felt wrong. So I wrote the statement myself. Not angry. Not dramatic. Just honest. I explained how exhausting it was to constantly feel financially behind while unknowingly being robbed. How humiliating it felt realizing I thanked my company for scraps of money that should have changed my life. How difficult it became afterward to trust anything involving banks, payroll, or digital systems. And most importantly, how terrifying it was knowing someone had quietly studied my life long enough to predict my behavior. I almost didn't read it in court. My hands shook while waiting outside the courtroom beside Natalie. Then the doors opened, and suddenly it became real. Tyler sat at the defense table wearing a gray suit instead of prison clothes. He looked older than I remembered. Not dangerous. Not intimidating. Just tired. That somehow made everything worse. Because ordinary people can still destroy lives. Judge Eleanor Watkins presided over the hearing. Sharp eyes. Calm voice. 30 years on the federal bench. Tyler's attorney argued financial desperation, job loss, mental health struggles, panic after unemployment, promises to repay everything eventually. Then prosecutors outlined the actual facts. 14 months of deliberate theft, sophisticated digital manipulation, identity fraud, use of Rachel's credentials, attempted financial framing, more than $137,000 stolen. When it was my turn to speak, I nearly backed out. Then I looked at Rachel sitting alone in the second row. And suddenly I realized this entire situation had damaged both of us in completely different ways. So I stood. My voice trembled at first, but eventually steadied. I spent over a year believing I was failing financially, I said. I thought I wasn't working hard enough. I thought I was irresponsible with money. Meanwhile, someone else was quietly building their life using income one earned. Tyler stared at the table. I can recover money eventually, I continued. But rebuilding trust is harder. Every paycheck now makes me anxious. Every banking notification makes me double-check numbers. Every system that once felt automatic now feels vulnerable. The courtroom stayed silent. Then I looked directly at Tyler for the first time. You didn't just steal money from me. You stole stability. And you almost destroyed your wife's life protecting yourself. Rachel lowered her head immediately. Tyler finally looked up then. For a second he genuinely looked ashamed. But it didn't change anything. Judge Watkins sentenced him to 9 years in federal prison. Restitution payments. Financial monitoring after release. Mandatory cybersecurity restrictions. Rachel quietly cried during sentencing but never looked at him once. I expected to feel relieved afterward. Instead I just felt empty. Outside the courthouse, reporters waited near the stairs. Cameras. Questions. Microphones. Natalie guided me through a side exit before anyone could stop us. You okay? She asked once we reached the parking garage. I don't know. That's normal. Does it ever stop feeling strange? She thought about that. Eventually it stops feeling personal, she said carefully. Right now it still feels like someone invaded your life. Later it becomes something that happened to you instead of something still happening. I hope she was right. A month later, Nexicor finalized its internal settlement. Daniel called me into his office Friday afternoon. The same office where this nightmare started. The irony wasn't lost on either of us. He handed me a thick folder. Nexicor's insurance approved reimbursement coverage, he explained. Combined with recovered assets and company compensation, You'll receive nearly full restitution. I blinked. What? He nodded. Not immediately. Some payments will take time. But financially you'll recover. I sat there speechless. Daniel leaned back in his chair. There's something else. He slid another document toward me. Promotion approval. Principal Infrastructure Director. Salary increase to $140,000. Additional stock options. I stared at him. Why? He looked almost offended by the question. Because despite all this, you still carried the North River Division for 6 months while cooperating with a federal investigation. He paused slightly. And because frankly, you should have had this promotion already. For the first time in months I actually laughed. A real laugh. Small. Tired. But real. That night Chloe dragged me out for drinks to celebrate. Halfway through the evening she leaned across the table and said carefully, "You know you're different now, right?" I frowned. How? You notice everything. First I wanted to deny it. Then I realized she was right. I checked receipts automatically now. Verified invoices. Read contracts carefully. Reviewed every deposit into my account. Even online shopping confirmations triggered double-checking habits. Part of me hated becoming this suspicious version of myself. But another part understood why she existed. Because blind trust had cost me over a year of my life. 3 months later I moved out of my apartment. Not because I hated it. Because I needed somewhere that didn't remind me of surviving. I bought a small townhouse north of the city. Nothing extravagant. Quiet neighborhood. Large windows. Tiny backyard. The first night there I sat alone on the kitchen floor eating takeout while surrounded by unopened boxes. And for the first time in almost a year, I felt safe. Not happy exactly. Just stable. Like the ground beneath me finally stopped moving. A week later Rachel texted me unexpectedly. "Would you meet me for coffee sometime?" I stared at the message for several minutes before replying yes. We met at a small cafe downtown on a snowy Saturday afternoon. She looked thinner. Exhausted. Older somehow. But calmer too. We talked awkwardly at first. Work. Chicago weather. Her divorce proceedings. Then eventually silence settled between us. Rachel wrapped both hands around her coffee cup. "I still can't believe he did it," she admitted quietly. I nodded. Neither could I. "He used to help me cook dinner every night," she continued. "He remembered my mother's birthday every year. He cried when our dog died." Her voice cracked slightly. How can someone be both people? I didn't have an answer. Before leaving, she looked at me carefully. "I'm sorry for what he took from you." I shook my head immediately. "You don't owe me an apology." Tears filled her eyes anyway. "Maybe not," she whispered. "But I still wish I had protected you somehow." That stayed with me long after we said goodbye. Because the truth was, neither of us had realized we needed protection at all. 5 years later I still check my pay stubs manually. Every single one. Salary. Taxes. Bonus calculations. Direct deposit routing numbers. Everything. At first it was paranoia. Now it's simply habit. People laugh when I talk about it sometimes. Especially newer employees at Nexicor. They think I'm overly cautious. Obsessive even. But they didn't spend 14 months unknowingly financing another person's life. They didn't spend nights wondering why success never seemed to improve anything financially. And they didn't learn the hard way that trust without verification can become an invitation. Life eventually moved forward the way life always does. Slowly. Quietly. Without asking permission. The restitution payments continued for years through federal garnishments and asset recovery. Tyler's prison sentence was reduced slightly for cooperation and good behavior. But he still lost nearly everything. Career. Marriage. Reputation. Freedom. Last I heard, after release he was working low-level technical support for a logistics company under strict monitoring restrictions. A man who once manipulated corporate financial systems, now resetting passwords for warehouse employees. Sometimes people asked whether I hated him. I never really knew how to answer that. Hatred requires emotional energy. And eventually I became too tired to carry that much anger around. What remained instead was awareness. A permanent understanding that ordinary people are capable of extraordinary betrayal when fear and desperation mix together long enough. About a year after sentencing, Chloe got engaged. At her engagement dinner, she pulled me aside near the restaurant balcony overlooking the river. "You know," she said, "you finally look like yourself again." I smiled slightly. "Do I?" "Yeah." She studied me carefully. "For a while after everything happened, you looked like someone waiting for another disaster." That hit uncomfortably close to the truth. Because after the investigation ended, I spent months expecting something else to go wrong. Another hidden problem. Another missing number. Another betrayal I hadn't noticed yet. Trauma changes your nervous system quietly. Nobody talks about that part enough. People assume once the criminal gets arrested and the money returns, the story ends. Doesn't. Your brain keeps searching for danger long after danger disappears. It took therapy to finally understand that. Real therapy. Not motivational podcasts. Not positive thinking. Actual conversations where I admitted how violated I felt. How embarrassed I was. How angry I remained at myself for not seeing the signs earlier. My therapist once said something that completely changed how I viewed the entire situation. "You trusted systems designed to be trusted," she told me. "That isn't stupidity. That's normal human behavior." I cried after that session in my car for almost 20 minutes. Because deep down I had spent years blaming myself more than Tyler. If I had checked earlier. If I had questioned things sooner. If I had paid closer attention. But hindsight creates fake control. The truth was simpler. I was busy surviving life. Working. Paying bills. Trying to build a future. I wasn't naive for assuming my paycheck belonged to me. 2 years after the case closed, Nexicor invited me to speak during an internal cybersecurity and fraud awareness seminar. At first I refused immediately. Then Daniel convinced me. "People need to hear a real story," he said. "Not just security policies." So I stood in front of almost 200 employees in a large conference hall and explained exactly what happened. No dramatic speeches. No inspirational performance. Just facts. How unnoticed discrepancies become normalized. How overworked employees stop questioning systems. How easily accessed credentials can become dangerous when shared casually inside marriages or families. The room stayed silent the entire time. Afterward, several employees approached me privately. One woman discovered payroll errors in her own department because she started checking records after my presentation. Another employee realized an ex-partner still had access to several personal accounts. A senior manager admitted he had shared administrative passwords with his spouse for years without thinking twice about the risks. For the first time since everything happened, the experience felt useful instead of painful. Like maybe something good could exist inside all that damage after all. 3 years later I was promoted again. Director level. Better salary. Equity shares. Leadership responsibilities. Ironically, the financial future Tyler once tried to steal became larger than anything he originally took. But success felt different now. Quieter. Less emotional. I stopped connecting money with security entirely because I learned how quickly numbers can disappear. Instead, I valued stability, routine, peace, people who consistently told the truth. That became enough. One winter afternoon, I unexpectedly saw Rachel again. Not in Chicago. In Boston. I was attending a technology conference when I recognized her sitting alone in a hotel cafe, reading on her tablet. For a second I considered walking away. Then she looked up and saw me first. The shock on her face mirrored mine. We ended up talking for over an hour. She had moved east after the divorce. Started over completely. New company. New apartment. New life. She looked healthier than the last time I'd seen her. Still sad underneath, but stronger too. At one point she smiled faintly and said, "You know what the worst part was?" "What?" I trusted him more than myself. I understood exactly what she meant. Because betrayal always rewrites memory afterward. You start reviewing years of conversations differently. Moments. Excuses. Tiny inconsistencies. You wonder how many signs existed that you ignored because love made ignoring easier. Before leaving, Rachel hesitated. "Tyler wrote me again last year." I looked at her carefully. "Did you answer?" She shook her head immediately. "No." Then after a pause she added quietly, "Some apologies arrived too late to matter." I thought about that sentence for a long time afterward, because it applied to more than just marriage. Some damage simply changes people permanently. You adapt. You heal. You continue living. But certain versions of yourself never fully return. And maybe that's okay. I'm 37 now. I still live in the townhouse north of the city. Still work too much. Still drink overpriced coffee every morning, while checking financial notifications before work. Only now it feels less like fear and more like discipline. Sometimes younger coworkers ask why I'm so careful with documentation and approvals. Why I insist on written confirmation for everything. Why I verify every transfer personally. I usually smile and tell them one simple thing. Because trust is good. Verification is better. Most laugh politely without understanding. And honestly, I hope they never fully do. A few months ago, the final restitution payment arrived. 5 years after the investigation began. I stared at the notification on my phone for a long time. Not because of the amount. Because of what it represented. Closure. Not perfect closure. Real life rarely gives that. But enough. Enough to finally stop measuring time by court dates, investigations, and financial recovery schedules. That evening I sat alone on my back porch watching rain move through the trees. Chicago was far behind me now. The fear too. Mostly. And for the first time in years I realized something surprising. Tyler didn't actually destroy my future. He delayed it. He complicated it. He wounded parts of me that took years to rebuild. But he didn't win. Because in the end I still built the life he thought I'd never notice was being stolen from me. And maybe that's the part that matters most. Not the money. Not the prison sentence. Not even the justice. The fact that despite everything, I still became the person I was supposed to become.